Hey guys, welcome back. In this video, we're going to be discussing functions in JavaScript. Let's start by talking about what are functions. A function is basically a block of code which performs some particular task. Let's say you want to do something a number of times within your program. Instead of you having to code it over and over again, it's much easier to create a function which will handle all that code. Let's dive in and create our first function. So we get into our code here, and let's start by creating a variable. We'll call this variable name, and let's give it a value of our name. Love it. And then let's create a function. So to create a function, we use the keyword function. Then we add the function's name right after the keyword. So we'll call this function logger. You could call it whatever you want, but usually pick a name that represents what you're trying to do. So we'll call this logger. We put parentheses, and then we add curly braces. So in between these curly braces is where you add your block of code. Whatever code you want to repeat will fall under these parentheses. So let's add a console log or a bunch of console logs. And within these console logs, we'll say, hey you. And let's repeat that a number of times. So hey you, hey you, hey you. Okay, so we save that. And let's go back to our console, and we notice nothing appears. So let me just explain what happens here. What happens here is when you create a variable, its value is stored into this variable name, and it's saved in memory. And when you create a function like this, what's within the function, the code within the function, is stored within the function in memory, but it does not get code, so you will not see it appearing here on your console. So in order for us to call our function, we are supposed to type out our function name, which is logger in this case, add parentheses, a semicolon, and let's save that. Immediately, we can see our console is showing the code which was written within our function here. Let me just take a moment to explain how variables work with functions. So within a function, if you have to create a variable within a function, let's say we move this name variable and put it into this function and save that. Then try to use the variable outside the function. So if we create a console log and we try to call name outside the function, we see that this variable name here cannot be accessed from outside the function. This is because of a thing known as scope in JavaScript. So you cannot access a function that has been created in a function from outside a function. You could access it within a function. This is known as function scope. Another form of scope that is available is if you are to create a variable outside a function. So if we created our variable outside like we had done before, we could use our variable within the function and outside the function. This is because the variable we have created here has a global scope. You may be wondering why we use parentheses when creating a function. Parentheses are important because we use them in order to pass information into the function. If you need some particular type of information that you want to pass into a function to use, we add parentheses, and within those parentheses, we add what is known as parameters. So let me just create a function to demonstrate what I mean. We'll create a function, and we shall call this function add, because this function's job is to add two numbers together. So within the parentheses, we add our first parameter, which will be num, or number, 1, and we add our second parameter, which will be number 2. We add our curly braces, and within here we can create a variable with const, and we'll call this variable sum, And this sum will take our number 1 and add it to our number 2. And then we'll create a console log which will pass the value of sum. And then we could call our function. So when calling our function that has parameters, first we call it normally by saying its name, and then first we add what parameters are going into this function. So we have two numbers. We have, for example, we could be trying to add 9 and 16. We save that. So what happens here is when we call this function, the number 9 is passed into the num1 parameter here, and the number 16 is passed into the num2 parameter here. And then it is added, 9 and 16 is added here and stored into the sum variable, which is passed into our console log here. So if we go into our console, we can see the result we get when we add 9 and 16. So this is something that makes functions really useful, because once you've created a function like this and you needed to add whatever two numbers, we can change that to like 19 and save that, and automatically we can see it's able to carry out our instructions without us having to rewrite the same amount of code over and over again. Let me just show you another example. Let's say we wanted to create a function that transforms a string into its uppercase. So we'll create a function and we'll call this function uppercase. So you could see the way I've written uppercase here. I started with a lower u and a capital C. This is called camel casing. It's a recommended way of writing your code because it makes it much more visible and easier to read. So within this uppercase function, we could create a parameter which we'll call text. Then we add our curly braces, and then we'll create a variable here. Well, first, let me just demonstrate how we transform our text into uppercase. So strings come with inbuilt functions within them. So one of the inbuilt function within a string, like our text here, is to uppercase. Comes with an inbuilt function called to uppercase, which transforms this text into the same text in its uppercase. So let's just save that to a variable, which we'll call new text. And then we could log the result we get using our console log. Then we log new text. So let's call this function, and similarly to call this function we use its name, uppercase, and then we pass in the value of what we want to transform to uppercase, a string value. So for example, we have name here, which is my name there. We save that, and when we check our console, it transforms all the letters into uppercase. So we could give another example of, we create another variable which we'll call YouTube channel. And my YouTube channel is just code. We'll save that. And then we could call this function again. And this time we pass in YouTube channel. And we save that. And we can see that it transforms all the letters of our string to uppercase also. So next, we'll talk about returning information from a function. So you have situations in which where you expect information to come back from a function. You don't want all the processing to happen within a function. We use a statement called return. So let me just delete this. I'll leave the name for now. So we'll create a function that we use to greet people. So we'll create it in the same way that we have been creating functions. We'll call function, and we'll call this greet. And then we'll pass a parameter of person, curly braces. And then within this function, we'll write our code for greeting our persons. So we'll just create a variable. We'll call this greeting. And then within this variable, it'll be a string that will say hello and our name. Our person. Then here we use the keyword return whenever we want to get information back from a function. So we'll say return greeting. So we can save that. And then outside the function, we could create a variable that will receive whatever information has been created within a function. So we'll create a variable, say const, we'll call it greeting too. Let's just use the same name, we'll call it greeting. Will be equal to the greet function. And within here, we can pass in the name of whoever we want to greet. So we have my name up there already. We'll pass that information into that, and we can log the information to see what came up using the console log. You say greeting, we'll save that, and we can see a greeting sent out that says hello lobby. Or you can change whatever name you want to pass in here. You could pass a string directly into here, like our good friend Mario. Hello Mario. So that's how you return information from a function. There are other ways in which you could create a function, but functions basically work exactly the same way. So the first way I'll show you of how to create a function is by using a method that's similar to creating variable. You create it with a const, and you give your function a name such as uppercase, and then we add an equal sign, and then we add the function keyword, our parentheses, and our curly braces. Within here, you could write your code in the exact same way we did it in the previous example. And then there's one last way in which we write our functions, which is my preferred way of writing our functions. We could say const, we give our function name, like uppercase, and then we add our parenthesis after the equal sign. Then we add another equal sign and a greater than sign, then curly braces. This is known as an arrow function, and it's my preferred way of writing functions, but it works in the same exact way as our last examples. So I hope you enjoyed this video. Please leave us a like if you enjoyed this video and share it to somebody who may like it. Subscribe to this channel if you haven't already, and click the notification bell so that you can always be informed when I drop a new video.